The bullet tore through my shoulder before I even heard the shot. Pain exploded, hot and sharp, but I didn't flinch. My body was already moving, shoving Vincent Moretti, the most feared man in Chicago, behind a rusted dumpster. In that split second, as blood soaked my shirt and the world blurred, I saw him again, Ethan, his son, my first love, standing frozen in the alley, his blue eyes wide with horror. My name is Riley Kane, 25, ex-cop turned private security, and I never thought I'd end up here bleeding out in a Chicago backstreet to save a mafia boss. But life has a way of dragging you back to the places you swore you'd left behind. 10 years ago, Ethan Moretti was the shy kid who stole my heart in high school, the one I'd sneak out with to watch the stars, dreaming of a future we both knew was impossible. His father's world dark, violent, and unforgiving tore us apart. Now, fate had thrown us back together, and I was caught in a storm of loyalty, love, and secrets that could get us both killed. It started 3 weeks ago when I took the job. I'd been scraping by, taking gigs guarding low-level dealers or escorting rich kids to clubs, when Vincent's men tracked me down. One job, they said. Protect the boss for a month. 50 grand. I should have said no. Cops don't just walk away from the Moretti family, but the money was too good, and I was too desperate. My apartment was a month from eviction, and my sister, Mia, needed medical bills paid after her accident. So I signed on, not knowing Ethan would be there, standing in his father's shadow, more beautiful and broken than I remembered. The alley was quiet now, save for the distant wail of sirens. Vincent crouched beside me, his silver hair glinting under the streetlight, his voice low and commanding. You're hit, Kane. Stay with me. His hand pressed hard against my wound, but his eyes were on Ethan, who was kneeling beside me, his hands trembling as he tore off his jacket to staunch the blood. Riley, Ethan whispered, his voice cracking. Why'd you do it? I wanted to tell him because I'd never stopped loving him, because some part of me still believed in the promises we made at 16, but the pain was pulling me under, and all I could do was grip his hand. Vincent's men arrived, pulling us into a black SUV. The city blurred past neon signs, rain-soaked streets, the kind of Chicago night that hides 1,000 sins. I was fading, but Ethan's voice kept me tethered. Stay awake, Riley. Please. His fingers brushed my cheek, and for a moment, it was just us again, two kids stealing moments in a world that didn't want us together. But Vincent's presence loomed, a reminder of the stakes. He was a man who controlled half the city's underground, and I'd just taken a bullet meant for him. That made me valuable and dangerous. At the safe house, a doctor stitched me up while Vincent watched, his face unreadable. Ethan hovered nearby, his jaw tight, his eyes never leaving me. You're reckless, he muttered, but there was something softer in his tone, something that reminded me of stolen kisses behind the school gym. I wanted to ask him why he'd stayed in his father's world, why he hadn't run like he'd promised. But Vincent cut in. You saved my life, Kane. That buys you a lot. Name your price. I looked at Ethan, his face shadowed with worry, and knew no amount of money could fix what was coming. The next morning, I woke in a guest room, my shoulder throbbing but bandaged. Ethan sat by the window, sunlight catching the blonde strands of his hair. He looked older now, the boyish softness gone, replaced by a quiet intensity. You shouldn't have come back, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. This world, it destroys everything. I wanted to argue, to tell him I hadn't had a choice, but the truth was heavier. I'd come back because some part of me had never let him go. Over the next few days, I learned the job wasn't just about guarding Vincent. Someone was hunting Hema rival faction, maybe, or an inside betrayal. The Moretti family was a fortress, but cracks were forming. Ethan was caught in the middle, torn between loyalty to his father and a desperate need to break free. Every glance we shared felt like a spark in a powder keg, threatening to ignite something neither of us could control. I was supposed to protect Vincent, but all I could think about was keeping Ethan safe. By the end of the week, we were on edge, waiting for the next move. Vincent's men were tight-lipped, but I could feel the tension. Ethan started slipping me information names, places, deals gone wrong. "If you're in this, you need to know what you're up against," he said one night, his voice low as we sat in the safe house's kitchen. His hand brushed mine, and my heart stuttered. "I never forgot you, Riley," he admitted, and the words hit harder than the bullet had. But before I could respond, the door burst open, and Vincent's right-hand man, Marco, stormed in, his eyes cold. "We've got a problem," he said. "Someone's talking. And I'm looking at you, Kane." Marco's accusation hung in the air like smoke, thick and suffocating. My shoulder ached, a dull reminder of the bullet I'd taken, but I held his gaze, refusing to blink. Ethan stepped forward, his voice sharp. "Riley's not the leak. Marco. He saved Dad's life." Marco's eyes narrowed, flicking between us, and I could see the gears turning. Didn't trust me, and he definitely didn't trust the way Ethan looked at me. The safe house was a fortress of steel and secrets, tucked away in a quiet Chicago suburb. High walls, armed guards, cameras everywhere. It was a cage disguised as protection. Vincent appeared in the doorway, his presence commanding silence. "Enough," he said, his voice low but cutting. "Kane, you're with me. Ethan, stay out of this." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. I followed Vincent to his office, a room lined with dark wood and shelves of books that looked untouched. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey, sliding one toward me. "You're good at your job," he said, "but you're too close to my son." I took the glass, but didn't drink. "I'm here to protect you, not cause trouble." Vincent's eyes were sharp, like he could see through every lie I'd ever told. "Loyalty is everything in my world. Kane. Cross me, and you're done. Cross Ethan, and you're worse than done." The threat was clear, but it wasn't just about the job. He knew something about us, maybe not everything, but enough to make my skin crawl. Back in the hallway, Ethan was waiting, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "What did he say?" he asked, his voice low. I hesitated, then told him the truth. "He thinks I'm a liability. Because of you." Ethan's face softened, and for a moment, I saw the boy I'd loved, the one who'd carved our initials into a tree by Lake Michigan. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I never wanted you in this mess." But we were both in it now, and there was no going back. The next day, Vincent sent me on a recon job with Marco to check out a warehouse in the South Side, a hub for his operations. The place was a maze of crates and shadows, the air thick with the smell of oil and rust. Marco was all business, barking orders, but I caught him watching me, his hand never far from his gun. "You're not one of us, Kane," he said as we moved through the aisles. "Don't get comfortable." I didn't respond, but my senses were on high alert. Something felt off, too quiet, too clean. Then it happened. A shadow moved. An instinct took over. I tackled Marco to the ground as gunfire erupted, bullets shredding the crates around us. We scrambled for cover, my shoulders screaming with every move. "Ambush!" Marco shouted, firing back. I spotted 3 figures in black, their faces masked, moving like professionals. This wasn't a random hit, it was calculated. I returned fire, my training kicking in, but my mind was on Ethan. Was he safe? Was this tied to the leak Marco suspected? We fought our way out, taking down 2 of the attackers. But the third escaped. Marco was shaken. His bravado cracked. "You saved my ass," he muttered, almost grudgingly. I didn't care about his gratitude, I wanted answers. Back at the safe house, Vincent was furious, pacing like a caged lion. "Someone's feeding information to our enemies," he growled. "Find them, Kane, or I will." His eyes locked on mine, and I knew he still didn't trust me. Ethan, standing in the corner, looked pale, his hands clenched into fists. That night, Ethan found me in the garage, where I was cleaning my gun to keep my hands busy. "You could have died today," he said, his voice raw. I set the gun down, turning to face him. "So could you. Every day you stay in this life." He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the heat of him, the familiar pull that had always been there. "I stayed because I had to," he said. "Dad needed me. But you're the reason I still dream of getting out." His words hit like a punch, and before I could stop myself, I pulled him into a kiss, fierce, desperate, like we were making up for 10 lost years. But the moment shattered when Marco's voice cut through the darkness. "Knew it," he sneered, his gun trained on us. "You're both gonna regret this." My heart pounded as I stepped in front of Ethan, my hand on my own weapon. Marco wasn't just a threat, was Vincent's enforcer, and he'd seen too much. The garage felt like a trap closing around us, and I realized we were running out of time to escape the web we'd been caught in. Marco's gun gleamed under the garage's flickering light, his smirk cold and dangerous. "You think you can play both sides, Kane? Protect the boss while screwing his son?" Ethan tensed behind me, but I kept my eyes on Marco, my hand steady on my own weapon. "Put it down, Marco," I said, my voice calm despite the adrenaline flooding my veins. "You don't want to do this." He laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the concrete walls. "You're not calling the shots here. Vincent's gonna love hearing about this." Ethan stepped forward, his voice shaking but firm. "Leave Riley out of it. This is my fault." Marco's eyes flicked to him, and I saw the calculation there. He wasn't just loyal to Vincent. He was jealous of Ethan, the heir who didn't want the throne. That made him unpredictable. Before I could react, Ethan lunged, grabbing for Marco's gun. The move was reckless, desperate, and it gave me the split second I needed. I tackled Marco, slamming him against the wall, the gun clattering to the floor. Ethan scrambled to pick it up, his hands shaking as he pointed it at Marco. "Stay down," he warned, but his voice cracked, betraying his fear. Marco spat blood, grinning despite the situation. "You're dead men," he said. "Both of you." I tied Marco's hands with zip ties from my gear, locking him in the garage's storage closet. It wouldn't hold him forever, but it bought us time. Ethan was breathing hard, his eyes wild. "What now?" he asked. I grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the SUV. "We run. We figure out who's behind this and clear our names before Vincent finds out." His face paled, but he nodded, trusting me like he had all those years ago. We drove through Chicago's underbelly, the city's lights a blur of red and gold. Ethan was quiet, his hands twisting in his lap. "I didn't mean for this to happen," he said finally. "I thought I could keep you out of it." I glanced at him, my chest tight. "You knew someone was after your dad. Why didn't you tell me everything?" He looked away, guilt etched into his features. "Because I didn't want you to hate me for what I've become." He told me the truth as we drove, how he'd been feeding information to a rival faction, not to betray Vincent, but to force him out of the game. "Dad's losing control," Ethan said. "The family's fracturing." I thought if I could weaken his grip, I could get us both out. His plan was naive, dangerous, and it explained the attacks, the leaks, the tension. You're playing a game you can't win, I said, my voice softer than I meant. But I'm not letting you do it alone. We holed up in a cheap motel on the edge of the city, the kind of place where no one asks questions. The room smelled of stale cigarettes, but it was safe for now. Ethan sat on the bed, his head in his hands. I thought I could protect you, he said. Instead, I dragged you into this. I knelt in front of him, forcing him to meet my eyes. I chose this, Ethan. I chose you. His breath hitched, and when he kissed me, it was slow, tender, like he was afraid I'd vanish. But the moment didn't last. My phone buzzed. Vincent. Kane. His voice was ice. Marco's out. He says you and Ethan are working against me. You've got 1 hour to come clean, or I hunt you both down. The line went dead, and my stomach dropped. Ethan's eyes searched mine, fear mixing with determination. What do we do? He asked. I grabbed my gun, checking the clip. We find the real traitor before Vincent finds us. We headed to a bar in Wicker Park, a neutral spot where Ethan's contact a low-level dealer named Sal might have answers. The place was crowded, music pounding, but Sal was easy to spot, nursing a beer in the corner. He looked nervous when he saw us. You're hot, man, he whispered. Words out. Vincent thinks you're the leak. Kane. I leaned in, keeping my voice low. Who's pulling the strings? Who's targeting Vincent? Sal hesitated, then slid a napkin across the table with a name scrawled on it, Lorenzo Vitti. A rival boss, hungry for Vincent's territory. Before we could press Sal further, the bar's windows shattered, glass spraying as gunfire erupted. I grabbed Ethan, pulling him behind the counter as screams filled the air. Sal wasn't so lucky a bullet caught him in the chest, and he slumped over, blood pooling. Stay down, I shouted, firing back at the shadowed figures outside. Ethan clung to me, his face pale but resolute. We were pinned, outnumbered, and running out of time. But as the gunfire roared, one thought burned clear. I'd die before I let anyone touch him. The bar was chaos, shattered bottles, screaming patrons, the acrid smell of gunpowder. I kept Ethan low behind the counter, my gun steady as I scanned for an exit. The attackers were Vitti's men, no doubt, their precision too sharp for street thugs. We need to move, I whispered, my hand tight on Ethan's arm. He nodded, his eyes wide but focused, the boy I'd loved now fighting to survive beside me. I spotted a back door through the kitchen, barely visible through the smoke. Go, I hissed, pushing Ethan ahead as I laid down cover fire. Bullets pinged off metal, and I felt the familiar burn of adrenaline, the kind that had kept me alive as a cop. We burst into the alley, the cold night air hitting us like a slap. Ethan stumbled, but I caught him, pulling him toward a dumpster for cover. You okay? I asked, checking him for wounds. He nodded, breathless. I'm fine. But Riley, they're not stopping. He was right. Headlights flashed at the alleys and another car, more of Vitti's men. We sprinted toward the motel, weaving through side streets, my shoulder throbbing with every step. Ethan's hand found mine, squeezing tight, and for a moment, it was just us against the world, like it used to be. But the roar of engines behind us snapped me back. We can't outrun them, I said, scanning for options. A fire escape loomed above us, rusted but climbable. Up there. We scrambled up, the metal creaking under our weight. From the rooftop, Chicago sprawled below, a maze of lights and danger. Ethan's breathing was ragged, his face pale under the moonlight. "I'm sorry," he said again, his voice breaking. "This is my fault." I grabbed his shoulders, forcing him to look at me. "Stop. We're in this together." His eyes searched mine, and I saw the weight of his choices, the guilt of dragging me into his father's war. My phone buzzed again, Vincent. I ignored it, knowing every second we stayed still was a risk. "We need to find Vidi," I said. "If we can prove he's behind this, we can clear your name." Ethan hesitated, then nodded. "I know where he operates a club downtown, the Red Veil. But it's a fortress. We'll need help." I didn't like the sound of that, but we were out of options. "Who do you trust?" I asked. He swallowed hard. "There's someone. Anna. She's Dad's bookkeeper, but she hates him. She might know Vidi's moves." We made our way to Anna's apartment, a rundown walk-up in Logan Square. She was in her 30s, sharp-eyed and guarded, her hair pulled back in a tight bun. "You're insane coming here," she said, letting us in. "Vincent's got a bounty on you both." Ethan pleaded, his voice raw. "Anna, we need to stop Vidi. He's tearing the family apart." She studied us, her gaze lingering on our clasped hands. "You too are trouble," she said, but there was a flicker of sympathy. "Vidi's planning a big move tomorrow night at the Red Veil. He's meeting a supplier. If you want proof, that's your shot." Anna gave us blueprints of the club, pointing out back entrances and blind spots. "Don't get caught," she warned. "Vidi doesn't play nice." I thanked her, memorizing the layout, my mind racing. This was our chance, but it was also a suicide mission. As we left, Ethan grabbed my arm. "Riley, if we don't make it," I cut him off. "We will. I'm not losing you again." We spent the night in another motel, planning our move. Ethan sketched Vidi's face from memory, his hands steady despite the stakes. "He's ruthless," he said, "but he's not invincible." I watched him, marveling at his resilience, the way he'd grown into someone who could face this darkness and still hold on to hope. When he caught me staring, he smiled, a ghost of the boy I'd loved. "What?" he asked. I pulled him close, my lips brushing his. "You're still you," I said. "That's enough." Dawn broke, and we geared up guns, knives, and a plan that was half desperation, half prayer. The Red Veil was a lion's den, and we were walking in with nothing but each other. As we approached the club, its neon sign glowing blood red, Ethan's hand found mine. "Whatever happens," he said, "I love you." My heart clenched, but there was no time for words. The door loomed ahead, and with it, our last chance to end this or lose everything. The Red Veil pulsed with bass, its neon glow casting shadows across the street. Ethan and I slipped through the back entrance, a rusted door Anna's blueprints had marked as unguarded. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and perfume, the crowd a mix of Chicago's elite and its underbelly. My shoulder ached, but adrenaline kept me sharp. Ethan's hand brushed mine, a silent promise as we moved through the shadows, eyes scanning for Vidi. The club was a labyrinth dimly lit booths, mirrored walls, a dance floor packed with bodies. Anna's intel said Vidi would be in the VIP lounge, meeting his supplier. We needed evidence photos, recordings, anything to prove he was behind the attacks on Vincent. Ethan's face was set, his jaw tight, but I could see the fear in his eyes. "Stay close," I whispered, my hand on the gun tucked under my jacket. We reached the VIP area, a balcony overlooking the dance floor, guarded by two men in suits. I signaled Ethan to wait, then approached, flashing a fake ID Anna had slipped us. "Delivery for Vidi," I said, keeping my voice steady. The guard squinted, then waved us through. Too bored or too drunk to care. Inside, Vidi sat at a table. A man in his 50s with slicked back hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Beside him was a wiry guy in a cheap suit, likely the supplier. I pulled out my phone, pretending to check messages while snapping photos. Ethan stood close, his body tense, ready to bolt. Vidi's voice carried over the music, cold and precise. "Vincent's weak. His own son's betraying him. We move tomorrow." My blood ran cold. Ethan's plan to weaken Vincent had been twisted, used against us. I glanced at Ethan, his face pale, but he nodded, urging me to keep going. We were almost clear when Vidi's eyes locked on us. "Who's this?" he barked, his hand reaching for something under the table. Instinct kicked. Aini grabbed Ethan, diving behind a couch as gunfire erupted. The VIP lounge exploded into chaos, screams mixing with the music. I fired back, hitting one of Vidi's men, but there were too many. Ethan yanked me toward a side exit, his hand gripping mine like a lifeline. We burst into a stairwell, footsteps pounding behind us. "They know," Ethan gasped. "They know I was leaking info." I didn't have time to process his guilt. We needed to survive. The stairs led to the roof, a dead end with nowhere to hide. Vidi's men were closing in, their shouts echoing below. I scanned the rooftop, spotting a maintenance ladder to the next building. "There!" I shouted, pulling Ethan toward it. We climbed, my shoulder screaming, Ethan's breaths ragged. The gap between buildings was narrow but terrifying, a 5-story drop below. "Don't look down," I said, but Ethan was already moving, his courage surprising me. We made it across, collapsing onto the neighboring roof, hearts pounding. For a moment, we just lay there, the city's hum drowning out our fear. "I messed up," Ethan whispered. "I thought I could control this." I cupped his face, my thumb brushing his cheek. "We'll fix it. Together." My phone buzzed. Anna. "Vidi's men are everywhere," she texted. "Get out of the city." But running wasn't an option. Vincent was hunting us. Vidi was closing in, and the photos I'd taken were our only leverage. I forwarded them to Anna, hoping she could get them to someone outside Vincent's reach. "We need to confront your dad," I said. Ethan's eyes widened. "He'll kill us." I shook my head. "He loves you. We make him listen." We found a payphone school, untraceably, and called Vincent. His voice was a growl. "You've got some nerve, Kane." I cut him off. "Vidi's your problem, not us. I've got proof. Meet us at the old pier. Midnight. Come alone." He didn't agree, but he didn't refuse. It was a gamble, but we were out of moves. As we headed to the pier, Ethan's hand found mine. "If this goes wrong," he said, "I need you to know, you're the best thing that ever happened to me." My throat tightened, but I squeezed his hand. "We're not done yet." The pier loomed ahead, dark and desolate, the perfect place for a reckoning or a trap. The old pier stretched into Lake Michigan, its weathered boards creaking under our steps. The night was cold, the wind carrying the scent of water and decay. Ethan and I stood at the edge, the city's skyline a distant glow, my gun heavy in my hand. Midnight was minutes away, and Vincent was coming alone. I hoped, but I wasn't naive. My shoulder throbbed, a constant reminder of how deep we were in this mess. Ethan's eyes scanned the darkness, his breath visible in the chilly air. "What if he doesn't believe us?" he asked, his voice low. I didn't have an answer, just a stubborn hope that Vincent's love for his son would outweigh his rage. The photos from the Red Veil were on my phone, blurry but damning Vidi's face. His supplier. Their talk of betrayal. It had to be enough. Headlights cut through the fog, and Vincent's black SUV pulled up. He stepped out alone, his coat flapping in the wind, his face a mask of stone. "You've got some balls, Kane," he said, stopping 10 feet away. "And you, Ethan, betraying your own blood." Ethan flinched but stood his ground. "I was trying to save you," he said. "Vidi's the one moving against you, not Riley." I held up my phone, showing the photos. Vidi's meeting suppliers, planning a takeover. "He used Ethan's leaks to make you look weak. I've got it all here." Vincent's eyes narrowed, but he didn't move. "Why should I trust you?" he asked. I stepped closer, ignoring the pain in my shoulder. "Because I took a bullet for you. Because I'd die for him." I nodded at Ethan, whose eyes glistened with unshed tears. For a moment, silence hung heavy. Then Vincent's gaze softened, just a fraction, when he looked at Ethan. "You're my son," he said, his voice rough. "But you've made a mess." Before I could respond, engines roared. Vidi's men, 3 cars speeding toward the pier. "Ambush!" I shouted, shoving Ethan behind a crate as bullets flew. Vincent dove for cover, pulling his own gun, and for the first time, we were on the same side. "You set me up?" he roared at me. "No," I yelled back, firing at the approaching figures. "Vidi must have followed you." Ethan grabbed a discarded pipe, swinging it at one of Vidi's men who got too close. The fight was brutal, chaotic, the pier a battlefield of splintered wood and blood. I took down 2 men, but my vision blurred, the pain in my shoulder overwhelming. Ethan dragged me behind a stack of barrels, his hands shaking as he checked my wound. "Stay with me, Riley," he pleaded. Vincent was holding his own, his shots precise, but we were outnumbered. I handed Ethan my spare gun. "You know how to use this?" He nodded, his face grim. "Dad taught me." Together, we fought back, Ethan's shots wild but effective. Vincent took a hit to the arm, grunting but not slowing. "We need to get to the car," he shouted. We made a break for it, sprinting through gunfire, Ethan supporting me as my strength faltered. We reached the SUV, piling in as Vincent floored it, tires screeching. Bullets pinged off the metal, but we were moving, the pier shrinking behind us. In the back seat, Ethan held my hand, his face streaked with dirt and fear. "You're gonna be okay," he said, more to himself than me. Vincent glanced at us in the rearview mirror, his expression unreadable. "You've got proof?" he asked. I nodded, holding up my phone. "Enough to bury Vidi." He grunted, blood dripping from his arm. "Then we end this. Tonight." We headed to a safe house Vincent owned, a nondescript house in Evanston. Inside, a doctor patched us up while Vincent made calls, rallying his loyal men. Ethan sat beside me, his hand never leaving mine. "I thought I'd lose you," he whispered. I kissed his forehead, too tired to speak, but needing him to know I was still here. Vincent laid out a plan hit Vidi's main operation, a warehouse in Cicero, before he could regroup. "You're with me, Kane," he said. "You've earned that." Ethan started to protest, but Vincent cut him off. "You stay here. I'm not losing you too." Ethan's eyes burned with defiance, but he nodded, squeezing my hand one last time. As I followed Vincent out, I knew this was our last shot, not just to stop Vidi, but to prove Ethan and I could have a future. The Cicero warehouse loomed like a fortress, its steel walls glinting under floodlights. Vincent's men fanned out, silent and deadly, as we approached under cover of darkness. My shoulder was a dull roar of pain, but I pushed it down, focusing on the task. End VD. Save Ethan. Get out alive. Vincent moved like a general, his arm bandaged, but his resolve unshaken. You watch my back, Kane, he said. I'll watch yours. We breached the warehouse through a side door, the air inside heavy with the smell of chemicals and metal. VD's operation was massive crates of weapons, drugs, cash stacked high. His men patrolled in pairs, unaware of the storm coming. Vincent signaled, and we moved, taking out guards with silenced shots. My heart pounded, not just from the danger, but from what I was fighting for Ethan, waiting back at the safe house, his life hanging on this moment. We found VD in an office overlooking the warehouse floor, his back to us, barking orders into a phone. Vincent kicked the door in, gun raised. It's over, Lorenzo, he said. VD turned, his smile cold. You're too late, Moretti. Your empire's crumbling. He nodded, and the room filled with his men, guns drawn. It was a trap, and we'd walked right in. The firefight was brutal. I dove behind a desk, firing at anything that moved, while Vincent took cover near a window. Kane, the crates, he shouted. I saw its explosives stacked nearby, VD's insurance policy. If we could detonate them, we'd take out his operation, but the risk was insane. I crawled toward the crates, bullets grazing my jacket, my vision swimming from blood loss. Vincent held his ground, his shots precise despite his injury. You're not taking my family, he roared, and I realized he wasn't just fighting for power, was fighting for Ethan. I reached the crates, pulling a lighter from my pocket. It was a desperate move, but we were out of time. Vincent, get out, I yelled, lighting the fuse. He hesitated, then ran, dragging me with him as the warehouse erupted in flames. We stumbled outside, the explosion rocking the ground, fire lighting up the night. VD's men scattered, but VD himself was nowhere in sight. He's not done, Vincent muttered, his face grim. My phone buzzed. Ethan, frantic. Riley, VD's men are here. The safe house. My heart stopped. We'd been played. VD had sent us to the warehouse to draw us away from Ethan. Vincent floored the SUV, speeding back to Evanston. If he touches my son, he growled, leaving the threat unfinished. I clutched my phone, trying to call Ethan, but the line went dead. Fear clawed at me, worse than any bullet. When we reached the safe house, it was quiet, too quiet. The door was ajar, and inside, furniture was overturned, blood smeared on the floor. Ethan, I shouted, my voice breaking. Vincent searched the rooms, his gun drawn, but I found him first. Ethan, tied to a chair in the basement, bruised but alive. VD stood behind him, a knife to his throat. Drop your weapons, VD said, his voice calm. Or he dies. Vincent froze, his gun lowering, but I saw the calculation in his eyes. I met Ethan's gaze, his fear mirrored by a flicker of trust. Don't, he mouthed, but I couldn't lose him. I dropped my gun, hands raised. Take me instead, I said. VD laughed, but Vincent moved, faster than I'd expected, tackling VD to the ground. The knife clattered, and I dove for it, cutting Ethan free. He clung to me, trembling, as Vincent and VD fought, a brutal clash of fists and fury. Vincent pinned VD, his gun to his head. This ends now, he said, but before he could pull the trigger, sirens wailed. Cops, closing in. Vincent, we need to go, I shouted, He hesitated, then knocked VD out, leaving him for the police. We ran, Ethan leaning on me, Vincent covering our escape. The safe house faded behind us, swallowed by flashing lights. In the SUV, Ethan buried his face in my shoulder, his voice muffled. I thought I'd never see you again. I held him tight, my heart pounding. Never again, I promised. We drove through the night, Chicago's skyline fading as we headed west. Vincent was silent, his hands tight on the wheel, his face a mix of relief and resolve. Ethan sat close to me in the back seat, his hand in mine, his bruises a stark reminder of how close we'd come to losing everything. The cops had VD, and the photos I'd sent Anna were already making waves leak to the feds, enough to dismantle VD's empire and clear Ethan's name. But Vincent's world was still a shadow over us. At a gas station outside the city, Vincent finally spoke. "You're out," he said, looking at Ethan. "No more of this life. You and Kenny go. Live." Ethan's eyes widened, tears brimming. "Dad." Vincent cut him off, his voice softer than I'd ever heard. "You're my son. I want you safe. Both of you." He handed me an envelope, cash, IDs, a fresh start. "Don't come back," he said, and for the first time, I saw the man behind the Mafia boss, a father who'd do anything for his kid. We left Vincent there, his SUV disappearing into the dawn. Ethan and I caught a bus to nowhere, just two guys with nothing but each other and a chance to start over. We ended up in a small town in Oregon, a place with quiet streets and endless skies. The house we rented was small, creaky, but ours. Ethan found work at a bookstore, his smile brighter every day. I took a job fixing cars, my hands finding peace in the rhythm of engines. One night, under a blanket of stars, Ethan pulled me to the backyard, a blanket spread on the grass. "Remember when we used to do this?" he asked, his voice soft. I nodded, lying beside him, our fingers intertwined. "I never stopped loving you," I said, and he kissed me, slow and sure, like we had all the time in the world. The scars on my shoulder, his bruises, they were reminders of what we'd survived, but they didn't define us. Months passed, and the past felt like a dream, distant but heavy. We heard Vincent had stepped back, handing his empire to a cousin, disappearing into rumors. Ethan wrote him letters he never sent, pouring out his gratitude, his love. One day, a package Aravedno return address, just a photo of Vincent, older but smiling, on a beach somewhere. Ethan cried, and I held him, knowing we'd made it because of the sacrifices we'd all made. Our life wasn't perfect. Money was tight, winters were cold, and sometimes Ethan woke from nightmares, reaching for me. But every morning, we woke up together, building something real. We'd talk about the future, maybe a dog, a trip to the coast, a life where no one held a gun to our heads. Love had carried us through the darkness, and now it was our light. As I watched Ethan laugh, stacking books in the shop, I thought about the bullet I'd taken, the choices that led us here. It was worth every scar, every risk. We'd fought for each other, against a world that tried to tear us apart, and we'd won. Not just survival, but a chance to live, to love, to be free. And in that small town, under those endless stars, I knew we'd keep fighting, not with guns, but with every moment we got to call our own.